Hey, what's up everybody? Wes here with Consumers Authority. Today I've got an awesome video. We're going to be converting this 29 gallon to this awesome 37 gallon. I'll show you here the difference in sizes. The last video I put out, I put up the whole 29 gallon from start to finish, and I found this awesome 37 gallon online. I didn't even know this size existed, so I couldn't resist. I don't have any fish in it yet, so I went ahead and got everything broken down. We got the back painted on the new 37, and we're going to get everything completely swapped over. I just did the same steps where I taped it up, painted the edges, and then rolled it with a few different coats. Once I got everything nice and dark, where I didn't see any light coming through, I went ahead and got it all set up. But here's that old 29 from the last video, but let's go ahead and jump right into it. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I swapped everything over, and one tool that I found very useful was this bucket head attachment. This goes on any 5-gallon bucket and it makes it a wet or dry vac, and that's what we're going to use to get the substrate out of the bottom once we're ready for that step. That's going to be the trickiest part if you're ever cleaning out a tank, resetting it, or swapping things from one tank to the other, but this tool is going to be very useful for you. So to get things started, I'm going to take a siphon hose and get about 5 gallons out of this original tank water, and this is going to be something that's going to sustain the plants on a couple of snails I got in here while we're getting everything swapped over. So the first thing I've got here is some Java moss attached to a rock. I've got a couple of those. Here's one of these little beta buddies. I think it's like an Anubis or Nubius plant. Somebody can correct me on that. And I've got 2 different Amazon swords in the back as well. So you just want to pull those up gently. They've only been in here for about a month or so, but they seem to be doing well, and I don't want to tear any of the new roots that have recently developed. So it looks like everything came out nice and clean. Here's the biggest of the swords that I have. And also inside this tank, I've got a couple little snails. Here's a Nerite. I'm going to put him in the bucket, and then we're going to move forward to getting the stack rock out. This is an XL stack rock that came from PetSmart, and we'll just get most of the water out of it and set it aside. And what's crazy is I don't even have any fish in here, and you can see how dirty it's got just in the last month. Here's our bucket with the plants and a couple of snails in here. This old tank water will be good to kind of keep things fresh while we're working on the tank and getting everything swapped over. The last thing that I have in my tank right here is this mag float. This is an awesome little glass cleaner. When you pull it aside, it floats to the top. So if you don't have a glass cleaner, definitely check these out. Again, these are made by Mag Float. You can attach a scraper to them. There's different sizes of it, but this is something that's going to be super useful for you. They make these for glass as well as acrylic tanks. And now my next step is going to be to get the majority of the water out of this tank. I've got some tubing that I picked up at Lowe's, and it's attached to a little makeshift gravel vac of sorts that goes all the way here to the living room, and we're going to get all the water sucked out. Now that we've got all the water sucked out, we're going to turn on this gravel vac, and it seems to be working awesome. This is something that I think is going to be super useful for you. I wasn't really sure if it was going to work when I first purchased it for this, but it did awesome. I mean, it sucked every bit of gravel out of here. I even took the little bit of water that it had with it. Again, this is a wet or dry vac, so it's going to come in handy for any other projects. If you had any spills, anything like that, any issues with your fish tank, or it's just handy to have around the house. Now, it fit everything in here except for this little bit, and that's just because the water got too high in here. So I'm just going to dump a little bit of that out and finish the last few scoops of gravel, which we have it all cleaned out now, and then we're ready to go. So again, we poured the water out, and then we'll just take this to put directly back into the tank once we're ready to get that part started. And this bucket head attachment, again, it can be found at Home Depot. It's about $28 or $29. I'll also have a link for it to Amazon if it's something that you prefer to just order online, but highly recommend. It couldn't have worked any better. Now, my next task is to break down this hang on the back filter. This one is a Title 55, and I've got a UV sterilizer included with it. I'll talk more on this in the video later, so we'll just put it aside for now. But we're going to get this thing pulled up, let the little bit of water that's in it drain out into the tank, and then we'll get it set aside. And then next up, we'll go ahead and get this 29 gallon that's completely broken down out of the way, and then we'll bring in our newly painted 37 gallon. The neat thing about this one is it's got the same footprint. It fits the same cabinet that I've got, and this one's made by TOPFIN. I found this online. I got a really good deal on it. It was pretty much new. The guy barely used it, so we're just going to get it cleaned up and get it ready to fill up. So again, we're going to use this API Safe and Easy inside and out of the tank to get rid of any dirt and grime. It's already been pretty well cleaned, but this is just for touch up. And then next up, we'll add just a little bit of water and then begin scooping our substrate back into the bottom of our tank. I recommend just doing it a little bit at a time, and then just fill some water as you go. I tried to put the plants in early, but they weren't holding up just because there wasn't enough water in the column, so we'll go ahead and get that filled up. A nice trick is just to put a bowl on the bottom, take your bucket or whatever your water source is, and just pour it straight onto that. That way you don't disturb the substrates quite so much. After that, we'll lower our rock back into place, and be careful not to mash your plants. I did just a little bit on that sword, but it turned out okay. And we'll just finish topping everything up and get it completely filled, get our filter back on, and then you can see here what a difference it makes. Just those 4 inches or so that this tank has in height, it clears that rock quite a bit better than my other one. We've got our little bubbler here in place. It's just a little simple black air stone with some black tubing. It's actually just powered by this little Pawfly air pump. It's super cheap on Amazon. Just a little tiny blue thing. It's super quiet. It's got these awesome little rubber feet that keep it from scooting around inside the cabinet. But I'll provide a link to that below if it's something you're interested in. This one's only 2 watts and it is super quiet. But this Pawfly air pump, it really does a great job. I don't have any kind of like dial back or restrictor on it. It's actually going full blast, and it provides a nice good bit of aeration for the tank, and it's going to be perfect for the fish once we get them in there. And my live plants seem to be doing really well for the most part. I like to keep them fertilized with some Seachem Flourish. I put a capful in there twice a week, as well as some API root tabs that you can put in there usually every month or so. It's a good idea to buy your plants locally if you can, and hopefully you can find them somewhere where they're already submerged. That way they're used to being underwater, and you won't have any problems with them melting once you put them in your tank. All you're gonna have to do is get them buried up in the substrate nice and good, and then get them some fertilizer, whether that's liquid or your combination of liquid and the tabs. And you can also opt to do the fake plants. There's nothing wrong with that, but the real live plants are going to be better for your fish and better for your tank in general, but that's a decision you'll have to make. Now, if you'll remember from my last video, I had the Tidal 35, and I decided to upgrade it for this bigger tank to a Tidal 55, and it just does quite a bit better job filtering it. You can see here I've got my UV light plugged into the side here, and I told you I'd show you that later, so here it is. This is it at nighttime, and you can set it for different timers like 3, 6, 8, or 12 hours, I believe, even to run 24. And it just goes inside your hang in the back, and it sterilizes any kind of microbes or bad things that might be in your tank. And the only thing I use extra in my tank is some Purigen, as well as a water polishing fine filter. This thing comes in a huge roll, and you can cut it up to trap all the fine particles that are floating around in your tank. And I may come back later and do more of an in-depth review on that, but for now we'll move forward. I've got these awesome lights here to light it up. That's something you're going to have to consider. Again, this is footage from my 29 gallon, but these things are remote controlled and they work flawlessly. They're super bright, and they have all kinds of different light settings, but these are great. I just put a hole in the top of the lid, got these little 3-inch acrylic discs, and then put them right on top of it. And it really pops on the 37 gallon. That's still providing quite a bit of light. I think it's actually better, in my opinion, than it was on the 29. It's going to provide enough light for these plants to thrive. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I made the switch from this 29 to the 37. You can tell it's just a huge difference, and it's going to fit my large rock sculpture that much better. It was a little too tight before. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in. It really means a lot to me. If you have any questions, definitely leave those in the comments below. I try to get back to everybody. The next video, hopefully I'll have the fish in here and I can show you that. I'm also going to hopefully show you guys how to test your water with the master test kit. That may be a standalone video. I'll have some other ones coming out. But in the meanwhile, I hope you'll consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Alright, peace.